VIBErations podcast, part 45, Mark Rawson. Hi, I'm Gary Brightman, and this is my periodic podcast called VIBErations. Established in 2018, Vibe is a book and music shop situated in Moi Wo on Lantau Island in Hong Kong. So, what's been happening at the shop recently? Major changes have taken place at Vibe in the biggest revamp of the past 5 years. Over the past 6 weeks, Stephen Walsh, our in-house store designer, has remodelled the tired old Vibe into a progressive music and bookshop. Vibe version 3.0. You really do need to come and see it to believe it. We've created much more room in the front of shop area now for music, gigs, talks and multimedia. The back half of the shop has the bookshelving reconfigured, the phone box chill-out room and a new larger children's book area. Larger kitchen for entertaining, and finally there will be a new mirror canto pop holy grail feature. We listen to the feedback of our customers and are adapting accordingly. Our sales focuses are books of all genres including English, Chinese and French languages, double the amount of vinyl, CDs and cassette tapes, hi-fi separates such as record decks, amplifiers, speakers, cassette decks and CD players, gift cards, wrapping paper, t-shirts, caps, sunglasses and Vibe and Tales Animal Rescue merchandise. After 6 weeks off from events at Vibe, last Saturday was a storming return, tiny desk gig featuring Ken Wilkins playing bouzouki. He blew the house away with his songs and lyrics. We'll definitely invite Ken back. You can see his performance on our YouTube channel, live at VIBEHK. And we'll also publish it on Facebook at Vibe Silvermine Bay and on Instagram, VIBEHK. In 2 weeks' time, it's Vibe's 5th birthday and we have Valoria playing their brand of the Pixies covers, as well as some surprise guest DJs. The action starts at 2:30 p.m. on Saturday the 20th of May. And finally, Vibe is not just a book and music store. We also produce music, video and audio books. Our music and video can be seen on YouTube at Live at VIBEHK, and the first 2 audio books produced are now available on Audible and 50 other global platforms. The books are The Inner Circle Wuxing Book 1 by Patrick M. Dransfield and The Green Door by Stephen Gannon. And so to this week's interview with Mark Rawson. Mark retired from a career in wealth management with a plan to travel, only to time that with the arrival of COVID. The first few years have given him time to reflect and reassess the things he felt were important and reconnect with passions and practice, being open to saying yes. Currently, his list is playing music with a number of bands, the Naggin Eejits, Black Velvet Collective and the 852, creating music, writing, recording and composing, running musical showcases under the banner What the Folk, developing a self-help group for original artists and working to raise awareness of local talent through radio, media and general introductions. Currently planning for a World Music and Dance Festival plus a St Patrick's Day Festival in 2024. He owns, with his daughter, an Embody Pilates and yoga studio. He and his wife foster parenting with Mother's Choice. Drop-in support for a number of disadvantaged communities, mentoring a number of businesses, assisting on experiential learning camps with students, helping his wife with her passion to craft the Indonesian batik, operating a small private kitchen focused on regional Indonesian cuisine and planning a podcast for this, getting ready for a number of expedition races, and finally, if that's not enough, developing a number of concepts around the Project Do. Welcome to Vibe, Mark.
Good morning, Gary. Pleasure to be here.
Good, and lovely to have you. And so, as we do, we're going to start off with 10 questions. The first question being, what's your favourite book or author, or authors?
Yeah, well, we're sitting in a bookshop, so I should be able to answer this one, shouldn't I? But the answer at the end of the day is I don't have a favourite book, and I don't have a favourite author, but I do read books that are sparked by interest from something that's occurred relatively recently. So I'll give you an example on that. I was back in the UK to visit my mum and dad, who have just moved up to a place called Scampton, just outside of Lincoln.
Okay.
And the local pub there is a pub called the Dambusters.
Excellent.
Okay, which is obviously where the Dambuster bombers took off from during the war to take part in that raid that was so important to the war effort. So as a result of that, at the moment the book I'm reading is about the Lancasters.
Right.
So there's a series. A gentleman, I don't know the gentleman's name, but he wrote a book about the Spitfire, and it was basically recollections of pilots that had flown the Spitfire and ground crew and people involved in it, etc. And he basically captured, whilst he still could, sort of stories from the people involved at the time. And he's done another one on the Lancaster. So having visited the Dambusters pub, met the owner, who's the grandson of one of the guys that flew in the raid.
633 Squadron?
633 Squadron, yeah. And so I'm reading the Lancaster book at the moment.
Brilliant.
And that's how I dip in and out of books. I'm not a great reader in the sense of reading all the time. I did read quite a lot of sword and sorcery, I suppose, with Lord of the Rings and things of this nature. But these days it's more about sort of dipping into things that are happening around us.
Who are your favourite musical artists?
Well, you're sitting there with a T-shirt that's one of those.
Yes.
So Gary's wearing a Specials T-shirt. I think we're roughly the same age, and we grew up in the same sort of environment back in the UK. So, yeah, that whole ska movement of the late 70s, early 80s was really important to me. Getting out, actually had the pleasure of attending a couple of the first Two-Tone Tour events.
Me too.
Which were just amazing.
Blew us away, didn't they?
Absolutely, yeah. Just that blend of punk spirit, but also those sort of Caribbean rhythms. Which just amazing, just amazing. So definitely that.
That was a genre.
So I was going to answer this by basically saying a little bit like books. I tend to dip in and out based on what moves me. So music has to make me feel something, and that can make me feel sad, it can make me feel happy, it can make me want to sing, it can make me want to dance, but it has to make me want to do something. So I like music of any genre that makes you want to do something.
Yeah, that's a good. I like that. Yeah.
And so there are within that pantheon, there are sort of artists, and there are certain types of music that are more important to me. So ska music is one. If I go back in time a little bit pre that, then I suppose one of the my most followed bands was Genesis.
Yeah. Okay.
Pre Phil Collins really taking over as a songwriter.
Yeah, sort of mid-70s. Early to mid-70s.
With actually I was thinking about this long and hard. The one album that I do go back to on a regular basis is Genesis' Seconds Out.
Okay, yes.
That is the Gabriel songs in a live environment, sung by Phil Collins, because I quite like Phil Collins as a singer.
Yes.
But I didn't particularly like him as a songwriter.
As a writer, yeah, I would agree.
And I love the vibe of that album, particularly going back to vinyl now.
Yeah.
Side 4, which is Dance on a Volcano, Los Endos, etc. is just amazing.
Yeah, well, albums just flowed, didn't they? And they were a body of work. They were two sides to make a whole, and they were studio built like a biorhythm, I think.
Yeah, and actually it's one of those things that I think I'm a little disappointed for the generation today that they don't perhaps experience that in the same way.
Yes.
And maybe at the end of the day they would say they get something better out of music than we do, and that's a fair comment. But when we were younger, you come across an artist through normally a single or normally a mate that sort of recommended something, because it wasn't really. There was radio, but it was quite difficult to tune into.
Yeah.
It was quite difficult to capture a particular artist at a particular time, because it was 11 o'clock on a Thursday night
Yeah.
on Radio XYZ, and it wasn't repeated.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So it was quite difficult. But
we had it hard, didn't we,
did
Mark?
it.
We had it hard.
but the result of that is
Yeah.
that basically when you bought, so you'd hear a track, and that would encourage you to go and buy an album. And it was within two months or whatever of having the album, the track that took you to buy the album was the least
Yes.
popular.
Yes.
Because you
That's
suddenly
right.
understand that was the accessible part of something that of a body work that
It
was
was lead
really,
in, wasn't it?
was really
Yeah.
quite important.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that immersion into the artist, rather than the pop element of the artist,
Yes, yeah.
was something I think was really.
Yeah, it was a real experience, and it was a real thing, and you were pleasantly surprised, I think, then by the albums, because you would always know that. You would always know, I'm listening to the most commercial thing that person's going to do, and then they're going to take me on this journey deep into
their minds,
into their
into their creativity, and it goes far beyond a 30-second chorus that basically took you there in the first place.
Yeah, I think bands like Queen. I think bands like The Clash, the punk bands. Were very much like that. If you listen to a lot of the punk stuff, I was a big punk fan. They were the very commercial stuff at the front end that you would hear, and then you would get back into them, and you go, there's a political element to this as well, and there's a social element to this, and
Most definitely, yeah. I mean, bringing it forward at the moment. I mean, I'm still have some. We're just checking if we're recording.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, two.
So still sort of dip in and out of sort of global music, etc. But at the moment, I'm really immersed in the local scene. So trying to, partly because of the radio show, which we'll have a quick chat on, I'm sure, a little bit later.
Yeah.
But every week I've got to come up with a list of tracks to play with Phil on the radio. And that means I've got to go out and do a little bit of research.
Yes.
And I've been really, really not just pleasantly surprised, but just blown away by the artists here in Hong Kong. So give you a couple of examples. So today, on the way over on the ferry, I was listening to the brand new album from Todd Warner Moore. So Todd's a chap that lives over on Lama. He's written, I think it's now 7 albums in 7 years.
Wow.
He doesn't perform that much. He does perform, but he doesn't perform that much. So he's a little bit of a best kept secret. But he's just a beautiful, tender singer-songwriter. Real sort of stories of his world.
Yeah.
And it's just phenomenal. Paul Roth, an Australian young man.
Yeah.
Similar sort of vibe. He's come off the back of playing in a couple of indie bands, one of which, Ezzy Morp, unfortunately is broken up, but until it did, was one of my favourite bands here in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
You've got people like Murphy's Law that are just in the process of recording stuff at the moment. Absolutely amazing dancehall and reggae music, which you'd love.
Absolutely.
Absolutely love. And the Young Bucks, I mean, the list can go on and on.
Very talented band,
Yeah,
Young
the
Bucks.
list can go on and on. And it covers all sorts of genres here in Hong Kong at the moment, which is so wonderful. From Sleeves, which are, inverted commas, a British indie band.
Yes.
Mr. Koo, who are a sort of surf punk band. So on and so forth. It's just amazing.
Yeah, Sirens. We've got all sorts, haven't we?
Yeah.
Favourite films.
This is a little bit easier in terms of giving a specific as opposed to sort of more generic, because Godfather 1 and 2 are my two favourite films of all time. And again, it's important in terms of this. It's about films that I would re-watch on a fairly regular basis, just to get back, and the characterizations, the storyline. Just amazing. That musical score again. So hauntingly beautiful.
Yes.
So that was a relatively easy one.
Yes.
The Lord of the Rings. Yes, love those three, and The Hobbit, etc. So I like that sword and sorcery piece, which we sort of mentioned a bit earlier.
Yes. preferred drink? Do we have enough time?
Well, I was listening to your podcast actually, so I'm actually feeling like a bit of a broken record, because most of your interviewees said tea.
Yes.
And you've got to speak to my wife about this, but basically she'll say the British people will rule the world on tea,
Yes.
or fix every problem on a cup of tea, and that's where I am, I'm afraid. So
Yep.
Come home from a big night out, cup of tea and a biscuit. Because
Yep.
normally there's no cake, unfortunately. So a cup of tea, and then closely followed. Not so much in Hong Kong because there aren't so many places you can get it, but a real ale.
Yeah, sadly.
Real
yeah,
ale.
yes, yeah.
From a hand pull pump.
Pulled, yeah.
Yeah, with no gas.
I was going to say, yeah.
No gas. Slightly chilled, because people always say it's warm, but it's not actually. It is slightly chilled.
Yeah.
But it's room temperature-ish as opposed to cold.
Yeah.
Sitting on a nice sunny evening.
Yeah.
Drinking in a beer garden in the UK.
You've got me imagining it straight away. Yeah.
Exactly.
And the feeling of drinking that real ale. It is something we sadly miss. I wonder whether it translates well to this climate, perhaps.
Well, it probably doesn't, but but there are a couple of places that you can. So a little shout out here. So if you're in the Globe, for example, they have one hand pull in there. Normally supplied by Yardley's, so there's at least normally one there.
Do you have a life motto? So there's two questions here that are quite similar, I would say. Best advice you were given and life motto. They often blend into each other.
Well, the best advice actually is quite easy to answer. Life motto we'll come back to, and that was because I had the real fortune to work for a gentleman called Ian Dyke. For many years back in the UK, I worked in finance, and again I know that's we'll come back to. He was a wonderful manager, fantastic people manager. In life there are always things that don't go that go well, and there's always things that don't go so well. And he would always sit me down when normally things went well. So there's a nice positive piece, but if things didn't go, he said, "Okay, I see. I can see, Mark, you're worried." He says, "Don't be worried. Be concerned, but don't worry." Worry he saw as a very negative trait.
Yes.
Be concerned because there's something that you need to fix, and so on and so forth. It is something we need to work on.
Yes.
But there's no point worrying about it.
I like that because that turns down the frame of mind, doesn't it? From something beyond worry is really panic.
Yeah.
But beyond concern is then a how-to fix.
Yes.
Thing. So it's getting your head in the right shape. I like that. I've never heard it before.
Yeah, no, and I've lived my life like that ever since.
Well, I think I have. Yeah.
It
makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Life motto. I don't have one as such, but a little bit around some of the pieces that I think life and experiences and adventures start with the word can.
Yeah, the positive. Yeah.
Too many people will look at something. So you'll be presented with something, and you'll find the reasons not to do something first.
Yes.
I like to these days and have done for many years. Start with can I, and then you get into the
the
logistics of it. But if you start with can, yes, I can do that. A small example there is that. We foster, so we foster through Mother's Choice. We've had the pleasure over the last 2.5-3 years of 7 children through our home.
Fantastic.
Which has been a wonderful experience, and people keep asking, how do you do that? I says, well, because we can.
Yes.
We're at a life position where we can put the time in. We're at a life position where finances are not so much of a concern. They're always a concern, but they're not so much of a concern.
Yeah.
And we've both got the passion and experience, and I suppose the heart to be able to do it. So we can.
And it is big heart, isn't it? Okay, we're going to veer off slightly here then. So, and because you have told me about this before, and I've never really had time to talk to you properly about it. When you foster, who are you fostering? What age groups? So I suppose it comes. So taking it back a little bit.
So Weeka and I, second marriages, been together for just over 10 years, and when we came together, I had 3 children. She's got 2 children. Did we want biological children together? The short answer was probably not. With the, again, let's be selfish with this answer.
Yeah.
The commitment for another 18 plus years at that
Yes,
time,
absolutely.
would have resulted in us doing different things with our lives.
Yeah, well, that's a responsible outlook for sure.
Yeah. So we basically considered and come to the conclusion that wasn't where we wanted to be, but we wanted that experience of helping a child in some shape or form together, and we saw an advert actually. Simple. We've been thinking about it. Actually, adoption was one of the things we were thinking about. But then Mother's Choice put an advert out. I think it was on social media, or it might have been a radio interview, something of that nature.
Yeah.
But they were talking about bridge parenting. They were looking for people to join a program called Project Bridge, and we just went along for the did a half-day induction just to find out a little bit about it. And the Project Bridge is a lovely sort of step in, because it basically allows you to step in as a foster parent, but it also lets you step in as a relief parent.
Okay.
So you imagine you get a call tomorrow, say we've got a young child, they need support for the next 3 to 6 months. Are you available? You would say, well, yes, but I've booked a summer holiday.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So your answer is yes.
Yes.
Can.
Yeah.
Okay.
How can you make it happen?
The logistics are there's a problem in this 2-week period because we've already booked it.
Yeah.
So what Mother's Choice now have is basically relief parents that sit alongside a main parent.
Okay.
Yep. So you can actually you could be the lead parent on a foster program, or you could be a relief parent on a foster program.
Okay.
So we've been lead on a couple of youngsters, and then we've been relief parenting on others, which is basically sort of like grandparenting.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good description. It is absolutely grandparenting, isn't it? It's where the grandparents would step in.
Where they would step in. Yes.
Where fathers and sons and daughters and whatever wanted to go on holiday and have some time to themselves or whatever.
Yeah, and
continuity.
And it's not necessarily around holidays, etc. Because many
situations, hospital, whatever.
Right. There could be lots of reasons why you just need that support. When we had our first child, a beautiful little girl, was with us for the best part of 3 years. She was on the process to be adopted, which was supposed to take 3 to 6 months. As I say, it took roughly 3 years in the end.
Wow.
And we were actually the relief parent, because basically we'd actually just joined the program within a space of about 2 or 3 weeks.
It's a good induction.
It was, yeah. But the main parent actually, again, circumstances, things happen.
Yeah.
They needed to step back from being the main parent, and so we took over. But we worked then with a lovely couple, Portuguese couple, young couple, no children at that stage themselves, and they helped us on weekends, because again, certain weekends you've
got a life to live and things to do. Yeah.
So they would step in and help us out. So
yeah.
So again, going back to that life motto, if it is such a one.
Yeah.
People will say, well, how can you do it? Well, the answer is because we can, and secondly because we then worked with Mother's Choice and some friends and so on and so forth. You worked the logistics out to make it happen.
Yes. Yeah.
To answer the question, in terms of ages, newborn through to whatever.
Yeah. And they're largely Hong Kong children.
They're all children born here in Hong Kong, obviously.
Yeah.
They're of different parentage, heritage. Local Chinese through to mixed race, etc., etc.
Yeah. What a great thing to do. Well done. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Well, people say that, and obviously appreciate the comment. The actual response to that from myself and Weeka is we get more out of it. Yeah.
Well, I can imagine me in that position. I would feel I'd get more out of it. Yeah.
You get such an experience, and again, apologies for a very personal reflection on this, but when I stepped into Weeka's life, she has had 2 young boys, And of course, you're stepping in as a inverted commas stepfather.
Yeah.
To with all the challenges that brings on both sides.
Yeah.
And actually, the first child we had, who we, as I said, she was with us for nearly 3 years. It's heartbreaking for all of us when she left us. But actually, on reflection, the oldest son, Rudy, he turned around and said, he was asked, "What do you think about the experience?" And he said, "Well, it's been really good because it's brought us together as a family."
Yeah,
which was lovely.
yeah. It's given them that family feeling.
Yeah.
And so, what's the oldest fostering you've done? What age group?
Well, the oldest would have been the little girl when she left us at 3.
3, right?
Because
okay.
every other one
so
has.
It's all in that age.
They've all been babies straight from hospital.
Yeah.
Now the Mother's Choice program, they generally support young mothers going through that early stage. So they generally support up to the age of 6.
Okay.
Other agencies, including the Social Services Director, obviously looking for foster parents at all ages.
Yeah.
So if it's something you're interested in, then you can reach out to a number of different agencies. Mother's Choice is just one of those. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll put that web link on the podcast, actually. Mother's Choice.
Yes. So they regularly run sort of induction days to talk through it all. As I say, called Project Bridge.
Okay. All right. So all of that came out of Life Motto. And so here we are, circling back to question 6. Believe it or not, 1 hour later. Anyway, so favourite Hong Kong walk?
These are such general answers, I'm afraid, Gary.
That's fair enough.
But let's be honest. The Hong Kong, if you talk to people outside of Hong Kong, I've talked to my friends back in the UK.
Oh yeah.
Their image of Hong Kong is of a city metropolis, and that's it.
I'm always telling people this. Yes.
And I mean, I'm sitting here at the moment in this bookstore, looking at a map called Lantau Island and the neighbouring islands, which is basically an ordnance survey map, and you open that up, and it's just the world's your oyster.
Yes,
just
absolutely.
So the answer to this is, Weeka and I, we love hiking. And we've been fortunate enough over the last, all the time I've been in Hong Kong, but the last 10 years, to pretty much have hiked everything. So including actually on her birthday a couple of years back, we did the 4 trails in 10 days.
Right.
So we did roughly 30 odd K a day. For 10 days.
That's good going.
And it was going to blow up our own trumpet because we were working in the afternoons.
Wow.
We were doing the walk in the morning, then heading into work in the afternoons.
Yeah.
So
that's the Macklehose and the Wilson's Trails.
Lantau Trail.
Yeah.
So we're fortunate to do all of those. Now those aren't my favourite trails, in fairness, although Wilson Trail, particularly up beyond
New Territories,
is stunning.
Yes.
My daily walk is a little walk off the back of where we live, which is called Brick Hill.
Right.
And it's classic of what we've got available in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
I get onto land, I walk 3 minutes down the road, and I'm in Country Park.
Yeah.
When I used to live in Discovery Bay, we talked about this earlier. I walk out of the flat, walk 5 minutes, and you're in.
We are blessed.
Pristine countryside.
Yes.
Here in Mui Wo.
Yeah. Up there, and you're onto the Olympic Trail, and then the whole Lantau is your oyster.
Just amazing. And so I don't have a favourite walk, if I'm honest. Brick Hill is my daily walk.
Yeah.
It's become a bit of an Instagram place, and so basically the weekends we tend to go somewhere else because there's basically just hordes of people taking photos. But
it's hiding from them.
Well, but I'm pleased that people are doing it. And
for sure.
Again, if you go back 20 odd years in Hong Kong, then myself and my friends were one of the few people out.
Yeah.
Now COVID's had a lot of impact on the environment.
Major impact.
But a very positive one in terms of getting people out and about.
Yeah.
There's some negative around that, but the positive is people are out enjoying the countryside and appreciating what we've got.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a big positive in Hong Kong. The Hong Kongers themselves have ventured out, and they can't get on a plane anymore, so they've got on a boat and they've started walking.
Yes, and all other activities from paddle boarding to sailing to just
camping.
We've
had a lot of camping and stuff.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Favourite Hong Kong restaurant? I bet there's a few of those.
Well, we were actually talking about this earlier, so I'm going to go back in time and actually re-mention the restaurant we were talking about.
Yes.
Because for many years, my favourite restaurant was here in Wuwei. Unfortunately, it's closed now.
Yeah.
And that was a Bachi restaurant just down the road, which was a Turkish restaurant.
Yes.
And I had the pleasure, for example, of playing a Christmas gig there, so eating turkey in the Turkish whilst playing Irish music. So there we go. That was some cultural
in the middle of the South Lantau Sea.
In the middle of the South Lantau Sea.
The South Lantau,
South
China Sea.
And you had Sertuk, who was the
Sertek.
Sertek, just a wonderful guy.
Yes. We miss him.
I think a good host makes a venue.
Yeah. He was a classic example, wasn't he?
Absolutely, so welcoming. He'd know you from Adam, and it was just amazing. There's another place. Isn't my favourite restaurant, but I love the vibe when I go in there.
Yeah.
Because I'm walking across from the Kennedy Town MTR. And the guy there basically sees me walking across, and he puts a pint of IPA on the bar before I even arrived.
Yeah.
It's a bit previous, really, isn't it? Come on, I might want something else today, but no.
Have a gin and tonic, please.
But it's sitting there waiting for me, and I like that sort of environment. My favourite at the moment, I'm going to have a plug on this, is my wife's kitchen, rustic kitchen.
Nice.
There we go.
Okay.
Private dining experiences.
Right.
She's a fabulous cook. Cooks Indonesian cuisine of different varieties from different regions of Indonesia. So yeah.
Finish this sentence. I live in Hong Kong because.
Where else can an old man like me do so many things so easily?
That's very true, actually, isn't it?
It's such an empowering place.
Yes.
There's. I don't think I certainly don't feel my age here.
No.
My kids would probably
agree with that. Right?
Agree with that one, and actually cover their eyes and put the fingers in their ears. But no, it's an empowering place. You can have an idea, and within reason, you can get it to work.
Yes. Your favourite area of Hong Kong?
Easy.
Yep.
My roof.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
My roof. It's my little sanctuary. It's it's whilst I talk about the this creativity and the environment to be able to do things in Hong Kong. It's just lovely to be able to get away and sit on the roof and relax and just contemplate life.
Look at Aptly Chow.
Look at the high rise. Look at Aptly Chow and look at the spot where the jumbo used to be.
I was going to say that. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. But I hear they're doing up the other one, Thai Pack, is it?
Thai Pack. Well, I really so obviously there was something in the press recently on that, and that's good to hear. It's unfortunate though, and that they've let it rot for so long.
But okay, so that's the 10 questions. We're going to go back now to what did you do in the UK back in the day before you came to Hong Kong, before you were in that school disco with a warm Heineken.
It was warm, yes.
And a square cheese Rivita biscuit.
You've got it pictured perfectly.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, very very simple, I suppose. Just lived a fairly a really enjoyable, fairly normal life. I mean, basically, I was raised predominantly in a place called Reading.
Okay.
Just outside of London. I was actually born just down the road in Windsor. My dad was in the forces, so we actually travelled around a fair amount. My dad's from a place just outside Scunthorpe, which is hence why they've moved back towards Lincoln. Mother's from Ireland, so basically we travelled around a fair amount early days, but most of my childhood was growing up in Reading.
Okay, so 2 questions about your parents. Your father was in the forces. What was he in the forces? Which forces was he in?
He was in the lifeguards, so the cavalry.
Okay.
The cavalry. But I mean, he wasn't in there for that long. But we had basically 5 or 6 years of travel around in the air when I was very young.
Yeah.
And then then basically settled down, as I say in Reading.
Mum, Irish, and so is that where you get your musical and Celtic heritage from?
It is. It is. I mean, the interesting thing actually, in terms of folk music in a broad sense, and Celtic music in particular, is it wasn't really my genre of music during my formative years.
It wouldn't be, no,
because it was. My gran would sing songs, and my mum would sing songs, and you'd pick up the ditties, but I wouldn't then go out and try and buy a record of those artists.
No. Well, you'd be stoned at school probably if
exactly,
you did.
Exactly.
You like what?
yeah. So aside from the occasional sort of watching an Ireland rugby or London Irish rugby game and singing a few songs there, then it really it was there in the background as opposed to music I listened to as in a listening pleasure type of environment. Yes. But as I've got older, I just love the storytelling side of folk music.
Okay.
So the answer is yes. That's where it came from.
Yeah.
The longer answer is it's sort of gradually surfaced over the years.
Yeah.
As opposed to something that has always been there.
Yeah.
With the exception of something like the Pogues.
Well, it was cool to love the Pogues, and it still is.
Still is,
Paul,
most definitely.
and to marvel at Shane MacGowan still being alive and kicking. Yeah, you got to love that guy, haven't you?
What an amazing
What's
character.
he made of? The same material as Keith Richards, in fact. All right, so there you are. You're in Reading. You have an early career in finance, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that was really simple because basically I finished secondary school, so A levels.
Yeah.
And had a place at university sort of booked. But as typical teenager, I thought I knew better.
You always do.
And my parents went off on a holiday that they'd planned, which I wasn't invited to. I don't think that's entirely true, but
it's a cool way to say it.
Cool. And basically, they came back to a note on the table said, "I've gone grape picking."
Gotcha. Wow.
So I didn't end up going to university.
Good on you.
So when I came back from grape picking for a while, they basically said, "Well, okay, what are you going to do with your life now?" I says, "Well, I don't know really."
Yeah.
And a family friend up the road worked in banking, Midland Bank. Do you remember them?
Yes, I was a member of Midland Bank before they were HSBC.
That's right. Yeah. He worked at bank and he sat me down and had a little chat and I said, "Well,
you pick grapes? Can you count grapes?
You should get into finance." And so
yes.
So that's where I ended up. I didn't end up at Midland Bank. I actually ended up with Commercial Union,
who
were a big insurance company. They had what's called an A-level trainee program, but it was a good grounding. They then sent me to my first overseas posting, and I got posted to the Isle of Wight.
All right. How exotic in those days.
It was amazing.
Yeah. Little island off the south of England.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
So that was my first role, real role after a training program. I was an inspector of accounts on the Isle of Wight. Still tripping back to Reading on a regular basis because I actually did play a little bit of music back then, very badly. I was in a punk band called the Leaping Geckos.
Well, that was a criteria to play music badly, to be in a punk band, wasn't it, really?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, you fitted that criteria beautifully.
Absolutely.
Excellent. What were they called again?
Leaping Gecko.
Leaping Gecko. That's quite cool.
And that came from a David Attenborough program. So I was very fortunate because basically career choices I never had to make, really. They just flowed. No, in some ways that was unfortunate because I never made a positive choice on anything. It was basically just things just happened.
You went along with them.
Just went along with those.
Yeah.
I was fortunate in that the career eventually took me to a company that had operations overseas. A financial company had operations overseas. The main one being in Hong Kong. And actually a couple of years earlier, they decided that they were going to close down all the operations outside of Europe. And at the 11th hour, the boss of the UK side stepped in and said, we want to keep Hong Kong going because of XYZ.
Yeah.
And I was offered that opportunity to come out to Hong Kong.
Okay.
So it was
What year was that? Yeah.
97. It was actually 96.
Okay.
But moved
Year
moved
before
out
the
in
handover.
The year before the handover.
Yeah.
And at that time we were working predominantly with the British civil servants that were over here, the forces, the police, etc. With effectively repatriation advice for, for them going back to the UK.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So so I got sent over at that time with a 2-year contract, but really 6 months to consider whether or not we kept the place open or not.
Right. Okay. Yes.
So I was given 6 months to consider that, and 6 years later we closed it. We lived at that time in Discovery Bay. I'd come over with a 9-year-old down to a 2-year-old.
Right.
And so three children.
Yes.
And we had them in Discovery Bay International School. It was a wonderful school. There are certain life moments that you need to make decisions around. One of those being schooling.
Yeah.
Different points. We'd already made a decision by the time the company that, as I mentioned, it closed down. We'd already made a decision that we were going to keep the kids in secondary school here. And then took about 9 months running kids around the mountains of Hong Kong.
Oh, right.
So
nice.
I ended up working with Dragonfly. You know,
Okay,
Dragonfly here.
I don't actually.
So
Probably should do.
Treasure Island, as was.
Oh, okay.
They
Yeah.
used to use a company called Dragonfly for
Okay.
experiential learning courses for children. Absolutely loved it.
Okay.
Basically, took about 9 months doing that, and then basically the wife basically said, you need to get back to work, so we need to pay some bills.
A proper job.
So ended back in finance.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
through a couple of iterations, that's where I was up until 3 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. I guess at some point in time you felt, okay, I want to change my life again. Did you?
Yeah. I suppose I'd wanted to change things a couple of years earlier than that, but the business I was in was bought by a UK institution. And that UK institution needed my licenses and needed me to be locked in for a couple of years.
Okay. Right.
So I was actually locked in for. It ended up being nearly 4 or 5 years because there was a couple of iterations, and that was fine. It all served purposes on both sides.
Yes.
But I'd already reached the point where I wanted to be outside of a corporate environment.
Yeah.
And I suppose, going back to one of your questions earlier about some advice received, well, one of the pieces of advice I was given to clients was about understanding where they wanted to be, really picturing where they wanted to be. What do the flowers smell like? What does the coffee? What coffee have you got on the table?
Yeah.
Where is that coffee? Is it sitting here or is it sitting there? Really think about where it is you want to be and the life you want to live. And then let's do a little bit of brainstorming around that as to how much that lifestyle costs you.
Yes. Yes.
Because once you're there, then
you're on the road to making that happen, aren't you? Yes. You've built your dream. Your goal is something that you then want to achieve.
That's right. Once you've got a really clear picture in your mind, and you can really experience it. Sportsmen do it all the time. They envisage the win.
Yes. Yes.
They work out that first corner. They've got it all in their head, and it's the same sort of thing. Too many people just drift through life.
Yes.
And they keep saying, well, I'm earning for the future. I say, okay, what's the future look like?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to retire. Okay, but what does it mean?
Yeah. Are you going to retire with money or old age or what?
Yeah. So the advice that I took for myself was, how much is enough?
Yes.
Now, reality is I probably got that slightly wrong. I probably need a little bit more, but
I think we all have actually, Mark.
Having enough to be able to step back and actually do things that you really want to do.
Yes, still to be able to make choices.
Yeah. And that's where I'd got to, and that's what happened roughly three years ago.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, I then started. I really wrote down a long list of things I wanted to do and wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
So a to-do list, or whatever you want to call it. And number one on that list was to travel.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
You know, I love world experiences and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But of course, when did I do this?
Yes, sure.
Start of COVID.
Yeah.
It was actually just before. It was during the protests. Actually, I made the step.
2019 now, aren't we?
And at that point, we actually had a foster child with us.
Yeah.
So we knew we couldn't do too much in the short term in terms of that. And then, of course, COVID started. So that number one element sort of
evaporated in
rapidly.
Yeah.
But then if because I've still got the list. If I look at the number 2, 3, 4, 5, I've not done anything.
Okay, that's interesting.
Not done anything.
Right. Right.
And
consciously or subconsciously?
No.
Yeah.
It's other things with this can attitude.
Yes.
Have come along and they've been a little bit more exciting to me.
Yeah.
Than whatever. So let's talk about music, because number 2 was, because I do play music. I'm in a couple of bands. I was actually in the 852, which is a big soul band. We just started the Naggin Eejits, which so that's 5 years old now, which is the Celtic band. Black Velvet wasn't on the horizon, and there was still another band floating around called the Vibe, or Vibes, should I say, not the Vibe, Vibes. Friend of mine that lives here in Muriwo, still here. He was the singer in the band.
Okay.
And we were the hardest working band in Discovery Bay. That was our little motto.
Excellent. And these are all folk based.
No,
bands.
not at all.
Not.
Not at all.
Okay.
No. So the Vibe was basically a party band. So it was basically a 4-piece guitar, 5-piece with a lady singer, but 4-piece core band.
Yeah.
Guitar band.
Classic.
Playing Katy Perry.
Oh, right.
So not classic.
I wouldn't have
absolutely not
put
classic.
money on that one.
No,
Okay.
Exactly. Well,
right.
I tell you what happened actually.
I hope the woman was Katy Perry, was she?
No, she wasn't. We had a couple of lead singers who we were all very fortunate to have, because we were 4 old geezers
fronting up
front with normally a rather attractive young lady at the front who could sing her heart out. So that was always really good. But I tell you, we started out originally as a standard cover band, you know, playing Summer '69, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And the moment was actually having I used to do the finance section on Phil's show.
Okay.
Morning Brew.
Right. Okay.
And the company I was with did, and I was one of their spokespeople. So I'd go in and talk about finance.
Yes.
With Phil in the morning. Yeah. And basically one day he said, "What are you doing at the weekend?" And I said, "Oh, by the way, we're playing at the Australian International School Fair."
Right.
And he said, "Oh, we're going to be broadcasting from there." I says, "Oh, that'd be great. It'd be great if you could broadcast one of our songs." He says, "But you're not going to be singing 'I'm an Old Geezer,' are you?" And I sat there and said, "Yes." Yeah. So at that point,
that was an epiphany.
It was an epiphany moment, and at roughly the same time, there was a little post on Facebook talking about cover band bingo.
Right. Okay.
And it basically had a bingo card, and cover band bingo, and on the card basically had you are definitely a cover band if you play more than 10 of these songs, and it was a card, and it had basically Sweet Child of Mine.
Your set list.
Yeah, basically. Basically,
love it.
So from that point onwards,
we're sort of 2019 still, or 2020.
You would have been around that, yes.
Yeah.
From that point onwards, I start from a musical point of view. I started to get the bands that I wanted to be in needed to have an impact. They needed to be fun, because let's be honest, cover bands are brilliant. They're great fun.
Yeah.
You go into the Wanch and somebody's playing Sweet Child of Mine. Well, everybody sings along. It's great. It is a great experience. I'm not knocking
Amazonia
it.
do well.
I'm not knocking it, but it's something that all the dad bands do.
Yeah.
In Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So for that point, I started to actually say, well, okay, I want to be in bands that we at that point were cover bands. But I wanted to have a very specific position. So the Vibes became a cover band for party songs that the ladies enjoyed.
Okay. Yeah. Nice idea.
So yes. that was that. So it wasn't dad rock. It was mum rock.
Mum rock. Yeah.
So that was that.
And they're usually the ones that are prepared to dance and have fun, aren't they? Whereas the dads are a little bit more
standing at the bar.
I don't want to look. Yeah, exactly. I don't look like an idiot.
So that was
gotcha.
That was the Vibes.
Yeah.
The other band, which potentially is going to be resurrected. Unfortunately, through COVID, we lost a few members. It was a band called the 852, which started out as a band called Black Cat Blues, and then basically through a bit of iterations ended up as called the 852. And that was a soul band. That was a northern soul band.
Nice. Okay.
So
like that.
we played. As you know, Northern Soul as a genre is sort of second division Motown, second division Stax artists, but
stateside,
but music that is great fun. Particularly with the big horn section, and we had great opportunity to play a couple of really fantastic events with the 852. So the 852 was a soul band, and the Naggin Eejits came into that mix as well, because obviously it's a Celtic band.
Yes.
At that point it was a broad Celtic, because we also had a Scotsman on the fiddle. So we had Scottish tunes and we had Irish tunes. So that's where that's at. So going back again, as I was retiring, those things were all still ticking along.
Yes.
And on my list, number one was to be a better musician, because I'm a jobbing musician. I play bass rather poorly. I play guitar even worse. I play other little instruments even worse than that. Number one was actually step up and actually be a good musician.
Yes.
And my bandmates will attest to this today. I don't even practice in between gigs. And then, music for me is about the experience as opposed to the playing element.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoy the playing, but I enjoy the experience of playing.
Yes, I get that.
Yeah, not the technicality of playing.
Yeah.
The reality is that the scene's growing.
Yeah.
There's always been some good original artists in Hong Kong. There always have been. David Barry Knives, whose final gig was last weekend.
Yes.
Have been around for a long time. There was a band called League of Gentlemen, came up with a brilliant album about 7, 8, maybe longer ago than that. Shumkin Mansions were around pre-COVID. I'm talking pre-COVID here. So there always were some good original artists in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Yeah, but basically the last couple of years, my interest in the local scene has grown because the local scene's grown.
Yeah. Yes.
When I started my retirement, so to speak, I planned to go travelling because I couldn't go travelling. I started to look at what was going on locally. Friends were starting to write some interesting music themselves. People were releasing things on a far more regular basis, Spotify and so on and so forth. And you just got this sense that there was a growing originality in the city that had been there, but not to the same extent. The nice thing about being in a world city with a diverse population base that comes from many walks of life, firstly, but secondly, cultures. The positive thing actually is with pretty much every genre you can think of is being covered is being created today somewhere in Hong Kong.
Yes.
Yes. I had the pleasure of running a thing called What the Folk, which is basically a world music forum. Where we put on shows, and I've had the pleasure of Nepalese artists. I've had the pleasure of Mexican, Canadian, French, Ukrainian.
Yes.
And they're not just recreating sounds of the past, i.e. folk music.
Yeah.
They're using those traditions to bring some new tunes and new ideas to the table as well.
Good to hear.
So going back a little bit, if I may,
sure.
the sort of starting point is I'm absolutely passionate about the originality that's grown in Hong Kong. Not me and Naggin Eejits and Black Velvet, but just the environment. And I would be regardless of what I was doing myself. So I've got two hats. I'm a musician, creating some music, and I'm also passionate about the music scene.
Yes.
So I always have to take those two hats whenever I'm talking to venues. It's quite interesting. So I'm talking about, I want to put on shows. What, for your band? Well, yes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for these people, because these people...
It's like, is it personal or is it business? Or is there an agenda here or is it hidden agenda?
That's right. So
it's just, Yeah,
so...
okay.
And the local scene really does need a massive push. And one of the things that I am trying to think through with people is how do we get Hong Kong original artists outside of the Canto pop area, which is massive and brilliant, but it's got a market.
Yes.
And it's got an infrastructure to support it, and it's got agencies, and it's got venues, and it's got foothold into Guangzhou, and it's got foothold into Beijing, it's got foothold into Taiwan, and it's big.
Yeah.
How do we take a band such as Murphy's Law, who are a fantastic group of musicians, playing brilliant original music, with a huge amount of passion, with a frontman who's incredibly charismatic. How do you take that, which is, if it's sat back in the UK or France, because they're French, it's a French band, French group of artists. If it's sat back there, it would have a following of 10 times what it's got in Hong Kong.
Yes. Yeah.
So how do we get that
organicness into the more professional?
Yeah. So
what's the platform to do it on?
Young Bucks, Canadian group, absolutely brilliant,
enormously talented.
Rookie album, brilliant. Favourite album of 2 years ago now, but favourite album of 2 years ago.
Great live.
Great live. The song Rookies, written by Rob Anderson, sung by Rob Anderson, is just heartbreakingly beautiful. Company Store, which is a cover, but an original version of that cover. Those two songs are just amazing. How do you get that out into the scene?
Yes.
Because do they want it? Is actually another question. In fairness,
yeah.
But I mean, there are some organisations out there. So the Underground, Chris B's Underground.
She does a great job.
She's a really, really good job. Predominantly for the indie scene, but she does a really good job generally for the music industry, both in terms of promotion and sort of facilitating events and so on and so forth, which is great.
Yeah,
there is a musicians' union. The musicians' union actually is predominantly around the health and welfare of the jobbing musicians, which is particularly the last 3 years has been really, really important. So all those bands that we all have such great times with at the various bars and clubs around Hong Kong that suddenly just couldn't be working. So they did a fantastic job on that over the last 2-3 years. But in terms of the taking an artist, and I'm not talking about management, I'm not talking about promotional agencies, but trying to raise awareness for that artist. As I said, Todd Warner-Moore just released a brand new album. Does anybody know about it?
Yes. And how would they know about it, type of thing. Yeah. We've got a lot of good resources here. We got Paul and the Sunrise Studios as well, and a good connection. We're small enough and tangible enough, Hong Kong, to get these things together, but it's making sure that the roots are set at the right level, that things have got something which we can build those things on. Absolutely. So I mean, Clock and Flap did a great job of promoting local artists, because they put on a good number of guys on that stage. That's a global event. Again, if you look at NME, our Bible of the day. It was the Bible of the day. Yeah, still love it. So
the NME covered Clock and Flap.
New Musical Express.
And so there were some nice little photos. But
Murphy's
Law ended up with, because he's very photogenic. Murphy's Law ended up with a couple of photos in there and stuff. So that's great.
That's internationalism.
So Clock and Flat, thank you guys for your support. Of local artists. Sevens last year, they had the focus on local artists.
Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes left, and then we're going to wind up, Mark. What thoughts do you want to leave with us? Who is Mark Rawson today?
Mark Rawson today really is an individual that's interested in ideas, to listen to bash around over a coffee, open-minded and happy to help and assist in any way you possibly can. And really is buy me a coffee. And I'm happy to have a chat. I think the wonderful thing about Hong Kong is exactly what we said about earlier. It's a very creative place. It's a very, very empowering place.
Very inspiring.
And part of that comes from, it's a smallish community, but of like-minded individuals. Sometimes all it needs is basically a chat to say, you should talk to XYZ.
Yes.
And if that's of any help to anybody, then I'm more than happy to do so.
Yeah.
So you can reach out to myself. I am on Facebook, Mark Rawson, but I run a thing called What the Folk Hong Kong.
Yes.
And that can be picked up on Facebook relatively easy. What the Folk Hong Kong.
Okay, all right. Well, I think we've run a good course there, and it just remains for me to say, Mark Rawson, thank you very much for coming to Vibe today.
Thank you very much. I've loved this opportunity. So thank you, Gary.
You can listen to all our VIBErations podcasts published on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Amazon Music, TuneIn and Alexa, Stitcher, Listen Notes, Player FM, SoundCloud, and a few others. Or you can watch on our YouTube channel under Live at VIBEHK. Or follow the links from our website at vibehk.com. The opening and closing music comes from Celestial and is called Green Island Dub, and is on the Retrospect vinyl album, on sale at Vibe. Finally, a reminder that Vibe is open 7 days a week, every day of the year, from 12 noon until approximately 6:30 p.m. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for listening to the 45th Vibe Book and Music Shop podcast called VIBErations. I'm Gary Brightman. You get my vibe?
Can you imagine what this old island must have looked like to those Dutch sailors when they first saw it? Fresh green. Like a dream of a new world.
They must have held their breath. Afraid it would disappear before they could touch it.